Fear runs more of your life than you think. In today's episode, we're going to talk about that fear that's keeping you from getting results, especially with your nutrition, with food, and with a healthy weight. I'm your host, Holly Bertone, and over the past few weeks, facing your fear, it has been such a common theme in my world. And it's also been a common theme for many of the women who I've been talking to, and even some of my students inside of the Accelerator. And fear is scary. I mean, I guess that's why they call it fear, because it's scary. But fear can paralyze you into just not taking any action at all. And I want to help you get past that fear. And that's what we're going to do in today's episode. I recently mentored for a local organization called Go Girls Go, and it's like Girls on the Run. And we had 33 fourth and fifth grade girls in the school that I mentored at. Well, twice a week, the girls would get a lesson. So the mentors would come in. I was one of the mentors. The girls would get a lesson. And we do things like self-confidence and nutrition and mindset stuff. The majority of these girls had never run before. So just learning to run was a big deal, let alone running in a race. Well, the season ended with a 5K race, which is 3.1 miles. And between the girls and the mentors and the parents, we actually had about 400 people running the race. And even though with the girls, we spent 3 months running and practicing, the 3.1 miles, and that's pretty far for any non-runner to run, let alone a fourth or fifth grade girl who's never run before. So we're at the race, and I ran with two of the girls at the race who didn't have a parent or guardian to run with. And I'd run with these girls all season. And it was me and it was the two of them and it was a few others during the season, not at the race, but during the season. We were the slower kids. We were the coolest kids in the group, but we were also the slowest kids. So at the race, it was just me and two of them. And then before the race, I asked these girls what their goals were because they've never run. And, and it was, we were some of the slower ones. I mean, it's not saying it to be mean. It was just the truth. It was a fact. It was obvious. And I'm like, okay, what are your goals? How do you want to do this? And both of them said, I don't want to be last. And I just kind of smiled and I looked at them and I kind of scooted down a little bit and I looked at them in the eyes and I said, I am extremely competitive. And I promise you, I will do everything in my power to make sure that we do not finish last. And you know what? We finished and we were not last. In fact, every single participant finished the race in under an hour. So we finished right around 55 minutes or so. So there was, I don't know, maybe 10 people behind us, give or take. But those girls, they not only finished, they didn't finish last. And this is what building confidence looks like. This is what facing your fear looks like. This is what courage looks like. Because when we were in the middle of that race and we were out in the field and there was no one around, it got hard for them. But this is what happens when girls learn early on that they are strong, that they are capable, that they are unstoppable. And as we approach the finish line, I encouraged my two girls to finish strong. Not just run fast across the finish line. I told them kind of something a little different than they were expecting. I explained to them that those few seconds as they're running across the finish line, as they've got the crowds on both sides, I said, this time is going to go quick. And I said, I want you to take it all in. I want you to notice everyone who is cheering. I want you to remember what that finish line looks like, what that big yellow sign with the word finish looks like. And more importantly, I want you to actually feel what it feels like to cross that finish line. To feel how proud you are of yourself. That you did something hard that you have never done before. And I told them, I said, I want you to remember this moment for the rest of your life. Because at some point, life is going to get hard. And when it does, you can look back on this moment and you can remember that you can do hard things. And you know what? That moment wasn't just about the girls crossing the finish line. It was about something so much deeper and something that we're not taught as adults. And that is, confidence isn't built by avoiding fear. It's built by facing it and doing the hard thing anyway. And it reminded me of someone recently. Someone recently shared a story about hanging out with Wim Hof. And if you're like, Wim Hof, I know that name. He has the Wim Hof breathing method, so you may have heard of him from that perspective. He's also the crazy guy who swims under frozen lakes and runs marathon barefoot and like climbs mountains in the snow with nothing but shorts on. Like, he's just that kind of crazy guy. And yes, really. Well, the guy who was talking about Wim Hof had said that Wim Hof does these crazy things because he needs fear to manifest itself. You see, we don't know that fear is there until fear surfaces. And then once it does, you actually have the ability to face it, to address it, and more importantly, to release it. And what this guy said about Wim Hof, it landed really deep for me. Because I think most of us think fear as this just invisible, intangible, scary kind of thing. But fear is actually also, it's very physical, it's very real. Especially the way that it can show up in our body. And then not just showing up in our body, but through our behaviors. Hello, eating. Fear shows up around food. Well, you know me. I love looking at patterns. And I was wondering, what are the common themes around fear with my students and that I mentored, and then also my clients? So I actually went back through some recent coaching calls, some recent conversations inside of the Break Emotional Eating Accelerator. And that word fear was there a lot. Sometimes it was specific, but more often than not, it was more implicit. And what was wild is that it wasn't acute fear. It wasn't panic. It wasn't drama. It was just this quiet, low-grade, habitual, just chronic, exhausting fear. Now, I'm going to read off 16 of these. And as I do, I want you to pay close attention. Which ones make your head nod? Which ones are you like, oh, Holly, yes, guilty as charged? If you're not driving, if you're not walking, if you actually are sitting somewhere or have the ability to get out a pen and paper, write down or count, remember, how many of these resonate with you. So I want you to count how many, and then let me know what your number was. I would love to hear from you. We can even chat about this some more. All right. So here's the 16. Number 1, fear of losing momentum and progress slipping away. 2, fear of starting and starting over. 3, fear of taking 1 step forward, 2 steps back. 4, fear of losing control. 5, fear of gaining all of my weight back and having to start over again. 6, fear of letting go of the scale. 7, fear of committing again for the 100th time. 8, fear of jinxing success. 9, fear of not doing it perfectly, so I'm just not going to do it at all. 10, fear of sitting with discomfort long enough to actually feel it. 11, the fear of feeling emotions without food as a buffer. 12, fear of starving if I don't snack all day. 13, fear of hurting someone's feelings by saying no to food. 14, fear of the struggle to stay consistent. 15, fear that nothing will work for me. And 16, fear of failing, even though I know what I'm supposed to do. If you didn't recognize these fears before, that's okay, because most women don't. But once you do, you can't unsee it. Like, this is a pattern that's been running the show. So what's your number? What is your number? And more importantly, what's that number costing you? Again, let me know what your number is. And not just that, though. what's coming up for you? Not just that number, but what's coming up for you as you're thinking about these. And if that nod becomes a head shake, like a head shake of disgust, of why can't I get this together? Or what's wrong with me? I want you to take a moment just right here, right now. I want to speak to you directly. I want to speak directly to the part of you that feels frustrated or even secretly ashamed. Because chances are you've done everything right. You've tracked and you planned and you meal prepped and you know what to eat. You know how to move, but you still can't do it consistently. And then when you are consistent, the needle doesn't move. And I want you to hear me out on this because you are not lazy. It's because you're scared. Okay, hear me out. Your fear is showing up in the form of control and perfectionism. And then when that doesn't work, you're reaching for comfort food, you're mindlessly snacking, and then it's more guilt and more delay. And again, there's nothing wrong with you. Your brain is operating from patterns. These have been ingrained for decades. These patterns are here to protect you. So instead of doing what you know you need to do, your brain's whispering one or more of these 16 fear statements that I just talked about. But what if fear's not the enemy? What if fear is not the enemy? What if it's just a signal? What if fear is just a signal that something important needs to shift? And that's exactly what happened to me recently. I made a big, scary decision in my business. Now, when I look back at my life over the last 15 years, I have faced some of the most frightening things that anyone could experience. Breast cancer, autoimmune disease, resigning from my dream job at the FBI, my mother passing, divorce, just to name a few. And okay, I haven't fully embraced my inner Simba where I'm laughing in the face of danger. But because of all of this, I don't fear as much anymore because I face some big stuff. But yes, the scary things still come up. I still get those fears. And yes, venturing into the unknown, it's always going to bring some fear. And I felt it. I felt it big. But I didn't let it stop me from taking those bold, risky moves. Okay, back to the big decision in my business. So at one point in time, I mentally made the decision. It was a lot of conversation, a lot of all the things, talking to my coach, everything like that. And I mentally made the decision. But after I made the decision in my head, things just stopped. And I did not implement it right away. And it actually took me some time to fully implement because of fear. My brain was saying, stay safe. Am I ready for this? What if I fail? All of the things. But my heart said, take the risk. It's the right move. And those inner dialogues, they are either our best friends or our worst enemies. And what I did was I completely shut down my high ticket program. It was several $1,000s to get in. And I wanted my entire focus to be on the Break Emotional Eating Accelerator. And I still do work with a few private clients too, but mostly on the Break Emotional Eating Accelerator. And this high ticket program that I stopped, it was one that I have poured so much time, money, and effort into serving my clients. And I gathered the ladies inside of the program and I explained to them personally what was happening, why it was happening, what their next steps were. And I was scared, but they could not have been more supportive. And here's where I want to bring this back to you. Because fear doesn't just show up in big decisions with a business. It shows up in the kitchen. It shows up in front of the pantry at 9 a.m. It shows up when you've had a long day and your brain is just giving you one and only one option. And that is food is going to make this better. And food is the only thing that's going to make this better. So we fear feeling the discomfort. We fear scarcity. We fear not eating enough food. We fear what it means if we lose control again. So we eat to avoid the fear. And then we wonder, why can't we break the cycle? But the other side of facing that fear, what's on the other side? When you face that fear, when you actually let it manifest itself, like what Wim Hof was saying, what's on the other side of that? it's peace, it's alignment, it's knowing. And from the outside, you may have heard the story about my business and you're like, okay, Holly, that doesn't sound like a big deal. You just shut down a high ticket program and just focused on another one. Like, so what? But what you may not see is this, is that bravery is not about being perfect. Bravery is taking those just messy, imperfect steps into courage. And it was a really hard decision. It was scary to say goodbye, and it was scary to step into the unknown. But addressing that fear and doing what I knew in my heart was best for me and for my business and for the women I serve, this was the only way forward. And yeah, I mean, that decision, it scared me. But staying stuck would have cost me far more than fear ever would. When I was going through breast cancer treatment, 2010, Dairy Queen blizzards were the duct tape that just held me together. And it was paralyzing fear, like literally worrying if I'm going to live or die. How on earth am I supposed to navigate life with cancer at 39 years old? And when I got divorced, after 14 years of being together and moved out on my own, I was paralyzed with fear. Ice cream and popcorn, those were the duct tape that held me together. And I picked comfort food because I couldn't deal with anything else. It was too overwhelming. So I spiraled and I needed to take the edge off. Until I realized this is just my nervous system doing its job. My nervous system was protecting me. It was keeping me safe. And once I learned how to work with my body instead of against it, that's when everything changed. And that's when I changed everything with my clients. And that's why I am now going all in with the Break Emotional Eating Accelerator. Because getting control over the food noise and losing weight, I don't want it to cost thousands of dollars. It should be accessible and affordable. So I made this program less than the cost of a typical Target run. And because 80% of women say they struggle with emotional eating, I created a clear and sustainable path that doesn't have the high price tag that's become the industry norm. So you know how you keep going back to the diet after diet after diet, even though they don't work, right? This is your brain keeping you safe. Those diets fail, that failure is safety. Because fear happens when you actually step out of your comfort zone to actually get the results. But when you address your fear, when you have the ability to face it and address it, you can actually release it. And when you release your fear, that's when you're going to start seeing progress, real progress, and not 1 minute before. Here's the thing. If I want to help women face their fears and take that next brave step, I had to face mine too. And I did. Fear is a natural part of life. I know we think it's scary, but it is a natural part of life. But the life that you want is always going to be on the other side of taking that scary step. And if you're a woman in midlife and you don't have control around food and the cravings and the mindless snacking just take over, and you're ready to get past your fear, you're ready to take that next step, let's walk through this together. So thanks for tuning in to another episode. I am glad you're here with me this week, and I'll see you next week.